Nothing can make us jump to a conclusion about someone like hearing them speak. It affects almost every sphere of modern life. We choose our friends based on their accents, we choose our partners based on their accents, we even choose our politicians based on their accents. Why? Well, it turns out that the tone of voice we use can communicate a lot more information about us than we realise.
So beyond the linguistic message, you can share with your interlocutors a lot of information that concern your biological status, but also your social status or your occupation, your socio-economical status, your mental or health, for example, or your health in general. All these kind of information are driven through voice quality. There are a lot of very subtle differences in people's voices, which enables you very quickly. It's 1/10 of a second, and you can have an impression of the person you are talking to.
But what quality in an accent are we actually picking up on? What makes someone sound electable, for example? Well, election results speak for themselves. More often than not, it is deeper voiced candidates that win greater shares of the vote. People with deep voices are also seen as more hireable, competent and trustworthy. Interestingly, our accent also changes depending on the environment we find ourselves in. We tend to mimic each other in social situations, and we choose friends who have accents similar to our own.
In general interactions, there is a common phenomenon that we start to pick up on the sounds, the way that the other person is speaking, including how quickly we speak. So if the other person is speaking slowly, we tend to slow down. And we also mimic somewhat the pitch within obviously biological restrictions when it comes to opposite sex. It's thought to be an in-group sort of a bonding mechanism.
So what about romantic attraction? Is there anything to the idea that some accents are just sexier? It was thought for a long time that what makes deep-voiced politicians electable also makes men attractive.
The level of testosterone in males is inversely correlated to the vocal height. It means that the lower is your voice, the higher is your level in testosterone. And we know, of course, that in biology, that testosterone gives a lot of advantages to males as far as their reproductive success is concerned. The lower is the voice, and the more sexual partners a man can get, and the more children have a man when his voice is very low. So through his vocal height, a man is able to give some information to a potential sexual partner about his own quality, biological quality. It means that this guy has a very good immune system, and he is more aggressive and more dominant, and he's more likely to be a leader.
Evolutionary biologists use this reasoning to justify why modern women still find deep-voiced men more attractive. We still have a predisposition for those traits. But can this evolutionary logic be applied to what makes women's voices more attractive? In the history of studying female voices and attraction, research from all around the world seems to suggest that women with higher pitched voices are more romantically successful. It's true that younger women have higher pitched voices, so this may give clues to their age and therefore how reproductively desirable they are. This conclusion has been repeated in some speed dating studies where women were observed to raise the pitch of their voice while on dates. In the last few years, some research has suggested that this might be changing, that women might actually lower their voices when speaking to an attractive man.
We set people up in a real speed dating situation. They spoke to each person for 6 minutes and then moved on. And what they do is they have a little card where at the end they can click whether they like the person or not. And so with those data, we had voice recordings of each person from each date, because each person was wearing a microphone. And we also had their preferences. And so we could essentially look at compared to the baseline of that person's typical voice. Do they raise or lower their voice pitch, for example, when they're speaking to somebody who they fancy? And what we found was actually women tended to lower their voice pitch to men that they ticked as a yes, men that they preferred, especially if those men were preferred by other women. And so it's quite possible that they are communicating maturity and competence in that context. And men actually also showed a preference for women who spoke in the lower voice pitch.
This one study looked at French students, which, until it is replicated elsewhere, might mean deep-voiced French women were a particular preference of French men.
We, for a long time, got focused on the universals, and it's very innovative to be interested in the cultural specificities. And typically, our findings on French males evaluating or judging females' voices was kind of new, because we didn't find the same result in any other language or any other culture.
So maybe our tastes are changing and reflect our genetic preferences less and less. Or maybe the French just know how to sound sexy in a way the rest of us could never pull off.